She admitted she was a virgin inside the elevator. The CEO overheard and cleared his entire schedule. "Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. And now, let us return to our main character. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing a packed metal box filled with strangers in business suits. Emma squeezed inside, clutching a stack of worn manila folders to her chest. Her breath came out uneven. She had rushed across downtown just to make this delivery on time, and the day had already stretched her thin. The air inside was warm, stuffy, smelling faintly of cologne and stale coffee. Emma pressed her back to the wall as the doors closed, her nerves tightening like a knot. Her cracked phone buzzed in her pocket. She fumbled it out, whispering into the receiver. "Jenny, please do not make me go tonight. I cannot do this blind date. I am already shaking. And if he asks why I have no experience with anything, I swear I will melt into the floor." She paused, then lowered her voice even further. "No, Jenny, listen. I am serious. I have never done anything. I mean it. I am 24 and still a virgin, and it is humiliating, and I do not want a stranger to know." A couple of people in the elevator shifted, pretending not to listen. Emma squeezed her eyes shut, mortified. She did not notice the tall man standing behind her, his shoulders broad beneath a charcoal suit, his expression unreadable. He was silent, still, almost impossibly composed. But the moment those words left her lips, something flickered across his face. His gaze lowered, thoughtful, as if the world around him fell away. Emma kept whispering frantically into the phone. "Please, Jenny, I cannot do this. He will think I am weird. He will think I am a kid. I should just cancel. I should—" The elevator dinged. Her floor. She jolted, ending the call so fast she almost dropped her phone. Oh no, excuse me, sorry." She squeezed through the crowd, nearly tripping as she stumbled out. Her cheeks burned red hot, her heart hammering inside her chest. She practically ran down the hallway, desperate to escape the humiliation. Inside the elevator, the doors slowly slid shut again. The tall man remained in the same spot. His jaw tightened for a brief second, his gaze fixed on the floor where she had just stood. Then he inhaled, steady and deep, and pulled his phone from his pocket. A dozen meetings filled his day. Negotiations, investor calls, a board presentation. All of it mattered, but not right now. He opened his calendar and began canceling everything, one by one. The name on the screen read, Ethan Hale, Chief Executive Officer, Hale Technologies. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, eyes lingering on the closed elevator doors. Something about her honesty, her trembling voice, her vulnerability in a room full of strangers, it had reached him in a way nothing had in years. And already, he knew, this was not going to be an ordinary day. Emma rushed through the hallway, still burning with embarrassment, the folders pressed tight against her chest. She delivered them to the receptionist, forced a polite smile, and stepped back outside into the chilly mid-morning air. Only then did she let out the breath she had been holding. Her hands were shaking. She could still hear her own voice echoing in her head, those words she wished she could erase. She pulled her thin jacket closer and hurried down the sidewalk, weaving through the crowd. New York always moved fast, but today she felt even slower than usual, as if anxiety had wrapped itself around her ankles. She kept whispering to herself, "Forget it, Emma. Nobody cares. It is over." But her chest tightened every time she remembered the elevator, every time she wondered if anyone had truly heard her. Across town, Ethan Hale stepped out of the elevator into the sleek marble lobby of Hale Technologies. His assistant, Claire, hurried toward him with a tablet in hand. "Sir, the board is waiting for your morning briefing. Your meeting with the investors starts in 15 minutes. Your lunch with Mr. Dalton." "Cancel everything," Ethan said calmly. Claire blinked. "Everything, sir?" "Yes." His tone was steady, but his mind was not. Something about that girl's voice, the tremble in it, the vulnerability, it clung to him. He had heard hundreds of voices every day, but hers had struck something deep. He could not explain it, not even to himself. Claire hesitated, then nodded. "Of course, sir." When he returned to his glass-walled office, he could still picture the way she bolted out of the elevator. She had looked terrified, like someone who had spent years bracing for the world to laugh at her. He had seen that look before in employees who came from nothing, in young interns afraid of taking up space. He sat at his desk, fingers tapping lightly against the polished surface. He wanted to understand why her voice kept replaying in his head, why he felt this odd pull towards someone he had seen only from behind, someone who had spoken without knowing he was listening. Meanwhile, Emma trudged down the stairs to the subway station, her breath white in the cold air. Rent was due in a week. She had 2 shifts at the diner tonight, and she still needed to figure out how to tell Jenny she was not going to the blind date. Her phone buzzed, a message from her landlord. Reminder, rent is due by Friday. Her stomach knotted. She swallowed hard and pushed through the turnstile. The train roared in, sending a gust of warm wind through the tunnel. She boarded, found an empty seat near the door, and stared at her reflection in the window. Second-hand coat, faded jeans, eyes tired from too many early mornings and late nights. "Get it together," she whispered, but the truth was heavy. She was trying her best, always trying, but life kept stretching her thinner and thinner. Back in his office, Ethan opened his schedule again. Empty, completely empty, something he had never allowed. His work was always precise, structured, controlled, but not today. Today, for the first time in years, he let instinct lead him. He replayed the moment in the elevator, her voice cracking when she said she did not want to be judged. Something inside him had softened, almost painfully. It had been a long time since he felt anything that real. He stood, walked to the window, and looked out over the city. Somewhere out there, that girl was moving through her day, probably believing no one had noticed her fear. But he had, and for reasons he could not yet name, he knew this was not the last time their paths would cross. Emma's train rattled through the tunnels, the metal wheels screeching as it slowed at each stop. She sat completely still, hands folded on her lap, her mind drifting between the elevator humiliation and the growing weight of her finances. When the train reached her stop, she stepped out into the cool afternoon air and began the long walk toward her tiny apartment building. The cracked sidewalks and flickering streetlights were familiar, almost comforting, even when life felt anything but easy. Inside her room, no larger than a storage closet, she placed her bag on the only chair she owned. A thin mattress lay in the corner, the blankets piled high to fight the winter cold. A small corkboard hung above her desk, filled with job application printouts and sticky notes, reminding her of deadlines. She took her sketchbook from her bag and set it gently on the desk. Just seeing it calmed her for a moment. She traced her fingers over the cover before opening it to a page filled with small dreams she had written years ago. "Find a place where I am respected. Work somewhere safe. Do not disappear." She let out a slow breath and shut the book. She did not have the luxury of dreaming today. It was almost time for her shift at the diner. Across the city, Ethan Hale sat alone in his office, the skyline stretching endlessly behind him. He had reviewed no documents, checked no reports, and returned no calls. Instead, he found himself replaying the sound of her voice, wondering who she was, wondering why she felt so familiar. He had built an empire by reading people sharply and quickly, but what he heard in her voice was something he could not categorize. Claire knocked once and entered. "Sir, the afternoon team asked if you would like to reschedule any of today's meetings." "No," Ethan answered softly. "Not today." "To those, right." Claire studied him for a moment. He looked distant, thoughtful, almost unsettled, but she knew better than to question him. She nodded and left the office quietly. By evening, Emma was tying her apron at the diner. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the smell of fried onions clung to her clothes the moment she stepped into the kitchen. She smiled tiredly at her co-workers, grabbed an order pad, and started weaving between tables. The night rush had already begun. "Emma, order up," the cook shouted. She delivered plates, refilled coffee, and tried to ignore the exhaustion sinking into her bones. One customer left a generous tip, another left none at all, but she remained polite, kind, steady. By 10 p.m., her feet ached and her throat felt dry, but she continued smiling through every order. When her shift finally ended, she stepped outside into the crisp night air. The city hummed softly around her, neon signs glowing against the darkness. She wrapped her coat tighter and walked toward the bus stop. Her breath fogged in the cold. She did not know that, at the same moment, Ethan Hale was standing on the balcony of his penthouse, looking down at the same city. His thoughts drifted again to the girl in the elevator. He wondered where she lived, what she was doing, whether she was safe. He did not know her name. He did not know her job. He knew nothing about her. But he knew he wanted to. And for a man who rarely felt anything beyond calculated decisions and obligations, that desire alone was enough to unsettle him deeply. It was the beginning of something he could not yet define, but he could feel the shift, quiet and undeniable, like the city lights flickering awake one by one. Somewhere out there, she was walking home under the same sky, and soon their paths would cross again. The next morning, Emma stood in front of the mirror in her small bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. The fluorescent light above her flickered, humming softly as she tried to tame the loose strands of hair that refused to stay in place. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she replayed the elevator moment, her chest tightening with embarrassment. But she had another delivery shift this morning, followed by a short interview for an entry-level position at Hale Technologies. She had applied weeks ago and never expected a response. Yet the email had arrived last night. She breathed out slowly. "Do not panic, Emma. Just get through the day." She grabbed her sketchbook, slid it into her bag for courage, and hurried out the door. Across the city, Ethan sat at his desk, this time dressed in a navy suit instead of yesterday's undone shirt sleeves. Claire stood beside him, reviewing a tablet as she spoke about the upcoming day's schedule. "Sir, we have a candidate interviewing for the temporary administrative assistant position. Human Resources requested your presence for 10 minutes near the end." Ethan's brows lifted. He rarely participated in entry-level interviews, but for reasons he could not explain, he felt an unexpected tug of curiosity. "Fine," he said quietly. "I will be there." Claire noted it without comment. She could sense something unusual in the air. Emma arrived at Hale Technologies with her heart pounding. The lobby was enormous, filled with glass, steel, and the soft glow of morning light. She adjusted the strap of her bag and approached the reception desk. The receptionist smiled and handed her a visitor badge. "Fourth floor, Conference Room B. Human Resources will meet you there." Emma nodded, her palms already damp. She stepped into the elevator, the same one from yesterday, and froze for a second before pressing the button. A wave of memory crashed over her, but she forced herself to breathe and step inside. The doors closed, and she whispered, "Please let today go better." "Begans?" When she entered the interview room, 2 people from Human Resources greeted her warmly. They asked about her experience, her goals, and her ability to handle pressure. Emma answered honestly, her voice steady, even as nerves fluttered inside her chest. Halfway through the interview, one of them asked her to step outside for a moment while they prepared the second round. Emma walked into the hallway, clasping her hands together, trying to calm her shaking breath. She stood near the window, looking down at the busy street below. And then the air shifted. Footsteps approached, measured, confident, unmistakably authoritative. She turned slightly, just enough to see a tall man in a navy suit walking toward the conference room. She recognized him instantly from business magazines, online articles, and news segments. Ethan Hale, the CEO. Her stomach dropped. She looked away quickly, praying he would not notice her. But as he passed, he slowed, as if sensing her presence. His eyes moved to the sketchbook, peeking from her bag, then to her face. For a moment, something flickered in his expression, surprise, recognition, and something gentler beneath the surface. Emma's breath caught. He was the man from the elevator, the man who had overheard everything. Ethan did not speak, neither did she. But the silence between them felt heavy, charged, almost fragile. He entered the conference room without a word. The door closed softly behind him. Emma stood frozen in the hallway, her heart racing so fast she could hear it in her ears. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady herself. Inside the room, Ethan paused before taking a seat. The Human Resources representatives glanced up in confusion. "Sir, would you like to review the candidate's file?" Ethan did not answer immediately. He was thinking about the girl with the trembling voice. The girl from the elevator who now stood outside that door, trying her hardest to stay calm. Finally, he spoke. "Yes," he said softly. "I want to meet her." At that same moment, Emma took a shaky breath and whispered to herself, "You can do this." Neither of them knew it yet, but this was the moment their lives would begin to shift quietly, inevitably, toward each other. Emma's name was called a moment later. She straightened her shoulders, smoothed the front of her blouse, and stepped back into the conference room. Her pulse pounded in her ears when she saw Ethan seated at the far end of the table. The human resources team smiled politely, unaware of the storm inside her chest. "Emma, thank you for waiting," one of the interviewers said. "We would like to continue with the final portion of your interview. Mr. Hale will be observing." Her throat tightened, but she managed a small nod. She took her seat, folding her hands in her lap. She felt Ethan's gaze on her, steady and unreadable, as if he were trying to place exactly where he had seen her before, or perhaps he already knew. The questions began again, soft at first, then more focused. She answered each one carefully, trying her best to ignore the weight of his attention. She kept her eyes on the table, afraid to meet his directly. But every so often, she felt compelled to glance up, and each time she did, he was watching her. Not in judgment, but with a quiet, searching curiosity. When the interview ended, the human resources team exchanged a few final notes and thanked her for coming. Emma stood, bowed her head politely, and hurried toward the door. She was almost out when a voice stopped her. "Miss Carter." Emma froze. Ethan had said her name, his tone low but firm. She turned, slowly. "Yes, sir." The room had emptied except for him. He walked closer, stopping a few feet away, keeping a respectful distance. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The soft hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. "I want to ask you something," Ethan said. His voice was calm, but there was a gentleness in it she had not expected. "Yesterday, were you in the elevator around 9:30 in the morning?" Her heart plunged. She felt the heat rush to her cheeks. There was no escape, no option to lie. She nodded slowly. "Yes, sir, that was me." A flicker of something passed through his eyes, recognition, then understanding, then something softer. "You seemed upset," Ethan said quietly. "I wanted to make sure you were all right." His words stunned her. She expected judgment, embarrassment, maybe even pity, but not concern. "I am fine," she whispered. "It was just a stressful moment." He studied her for a second longer, then nodded. "I understand. The Dallamans, we have most with them." Emma clutched the strap of her bag, unsure what to do. She had imagined the CEO of a massive company as cold, distant, unreachable. But standing here, he seemed almost human, almost kind. Ethan continued. "Your interview went well. You handled yourself with honesty and composure." He paused. "We value that here." Emma blinked. She was not sure she had heard him correctly. "Are you saying—" "You will receive a formal email," he said. "But yes, I would like to offer you the temporary position." Her breath caught in her throat. She had expected rejection, not opportunity. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank you very much." She left the room before her knees gave out. In the hallway, she pressed both hands over her mouth, trying not to cry. A job, a real job. Even if it was temporary, it meant a chance, a beginning, a breath of air after months of barely keeping her head above water. Inside the conference room, Ethan remained standing by the table, staring at the door she had slipped through. Something inside him felt unexpectedly light. Her presence carried a sincerity he rarely encountered in his world of power, negotiation, and curated appearances. Claire appeared at the doorway. "Sir, should I prepare the rest of your schedule?" Ethan turned to her. "Clear my morning. I will return after lunch." Claire stiffened in surprise but nodded. "Of course. Two different as Sieva." The moment she left, Ethan exhaled slowly. He could not shake the image of Emma's eyes wide, anxious but determined. He felt the sudden urge to know more about her, not as a CEO evaluating an employee, as a man trying to understand why a stranger had stayed in his mind since the moment he heard her trembling voice. Outside, Emma stepped into the sunlight, hugging her bag against her chest as if it held her entire future. The city felt new today, brighter, warmer, even though the air was still cold. She had no idea that somewhere above her, in a corner office of glass and steel, Ethan Hale was watching her walk away, feeling something shift inside him quietly, unmistakably. Their connection had begun, and neither of them could stop it now. Emma's first day on the job began before sunrise. She arrived early, clutching a paper cup of cheap coffee, her nerves coiled tight beneath her ribs. The office was quiet at that hour, filled with the soft hum of machines waking up and the faint glow of computer screens left on overnight. She pinned her temporary badge to her blouse and headed toward her assigned desk outside the executive wing. Her workspace was small but clean, with a neat stack of orientation papers waiting for her. She took a deep breath, pulled out her notebook, and began reading through the tasks. Filing client documents, updating schedules, sorting internal memos. None of it was glamorous, but it was stable, steady, and hers. For the first time in months, she felt grounded. By 9 o'clock, the building began to fill. People rushed through the hallway with coffee and tablets, their conversations overlapping. Emma kept her head down, typing meeting notes into the system exactly as she had been instructed. She tried to blend in, to avoid drawing attention. But every now and then, she felt something, a presence, a shift in the air. She looked up once and saw Ethan walking down the hallway with Claire. He was focused, composed, issuing quiet instructions. His navy suit contrasted the bright morning light pouring in from the windows. He walked past without looking at her, and she let out a breath she did not realize she had been holding. Still, she sensed it. He had noticed she was there. Late in the morning, one of the senior assistants hurried toward her desk, a stack of files in hand. "Emma, can you take these reports up to the executive meeting room? They need them before noon." "Yes, of course," she replied, standing quickly. She gathered the folders, balanced them carefully, and walked toward the elevator. The hallway grew quieter the closer she came to the top-floor executive suite. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped out into a world that did not feel like hers. Sleek floors, wide windows overlooking the skyline, artwork that probably cost more than several months of her rent. She approached the meeting room and knocked gently before stepping inside. A group of executives sat around the long table, but Ethan was the first person she saw. He lifted his head, their eyes met for a brief moment. "Excuse me," Emma said softly, placing the documents on the table. "These are the reports you requested." "Thank you," Ethan responded, his voice calm but warm. "You may leave them there." "Du answered. With that, sen?" His tone was polite, but there was something else behind it, an unspoken acknowledgement, a familiarity that should not have existed. She nodded, stepped back, and left as quietly as she had entered. Outside the room, she leaned against the wall for a second, letting her heartbeat slow. She reminded herself that he was her boss. He was her CEO. She needed to focus on work, not on the strange electricity she felt whenever he looked at her. Hours later, as her shift neared its end, Emma was organizing files at her desk when someone approached. She looked up and froze. It was Ethan. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, expression steady but unreadable. The hallway behind him was empty, silent except for the distant hum of printers. "Miss Carter," he said, "are you settling in?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity." His eyes softened, just slightly. "You earned it." Her cheeks warmed. She looked down at the papers on her desk, unsure what else to say. Ethan glanced at the clock, then back at her. "If you need anything, guidance, clarification, support, do not hesitate to ask." "I will," she said quietly. He gave a small nod, then walked away, the echoes of his footsteps fading down the hallway. Emma exhaled slowly, realizing she had been holding her breath again. Something was happening, she could feel it, but she had no words for it yet, and neither did he. But the distance between them was already growing smaller, one quiet moment at a time. Emma's days at Hale Technologies settled into a steady rhythm. She arrived early, organized files, managed schedules, and assisted the senior staff with quiet diligence. The work was demanding, but she found comfort in the structure. Every completed task felt like a small victory, a reminder that she was finally building something stable. By the end of her first week, people had begun to notice her. A few co-workers greeted her warmly in the mornings. One even complimented her organization system. These small moments, simple as they were, meant everything to her. But the person she noticed most was Ethan. He passed her desk often, usually on his way to meetings. He never lingered, never crossed professional boundaries, but each time their eyes met, a subtle shift stirred inside her. She was careful not to show it. She kept her posture straight, her tone polite, her attention on her work. Even so, she felt it. One late afternoon, Emma was sorting through archived contracts in the records room. It was a quiet space tucked near the end of the executive hallway, filled with shelves of labeled boxes. She balanced on her toes to return a binder to the top shelf, but the edge slipped from her fingers. She gasped and reached for it, but it fell forward. Before it hit the ground, a hand caught it. Emma turned sharply. Ethan stood behind her, holding the binder with ease. He had taken off his suit jacket, leaving only his crisp white shirt. sleeves rolled slightly at the wrists. He looked different like this, less distant, more human. "Careful," he said. "These shelves can be unpredictable." Her heart thudded in her chest. "Thank you, sir. I did not see you there." "I noticed," he said softly, placing the binder back on the shelf for her. "Are they overloading you with work?" "No, not at all. I want to do well. The rocks no to brew that was no to bid. You are doing well," he replied, his voice steady, reassuring. For a moment, the room felt smaller, quieter. Emma stepped back, aware of the space between them, aware of how it suddenly felt like too little. She clutched the stack of folders in her hands, grounding herself. "I should finish these before the end of the day," she said gently. He nodded, but the look in his eyes lingered on her a little longer than necessary. "Of course, I will let you get back to it." And he left the room, but as he walked away, Emma could feel her pulse still racing. She exhaled slowly, trying to settle the flutter in her chest. She knew better than to read into moments like these. Men like Ethan Hale belonged to a world far beyond hers. Still, she could not deny what she felt. Later that evening, as she packed her things, she received a message from the senior assistant asking her to bring a set of documents to the rooftop garden. It was a place employees rarely visited, but Emma followed the instructions. She carried the files up the stairs, pushed open the heavy door, and stepped into the crisp evening air. She was surprised to see Ethan standing near the edge of the terrace, looking out at the city. The sky was fading from gold to soft blue, the skyline glowing with the first lights of the night. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "Miss Carter," he said, "I asked them to send you." She blinked. "You needed these files, sir." He shook his head gently. "No, I needed a moment, and I thought perhaps you did too." She felt her breath catch, unsure how to respond. He continued, "This place helps me think. It helps me breathe. Sometimes the pressure below becomes too loud." Emma stepped closer, stopping beside him but leaving a respectful distance. "It is beautiful up here," she said. "It is," Ethan replied, "but it feels different today." She turned slightly toward him. "Different how, sir?" His eyes met hers with a quiet intensity. "Because you are here." Emma's heart seemed to stop, then race all at once. The breeze lifted her hair, and for a moment the world felt suspended in soft, fragile stillness. Neither of them moved, neither of them spoke, but something between them shifted again, gentle, undeniable, and far more powerful than either had anticipated. The breeze on the rooftop softened, carrying the quiet hum of the city below. Emma stood beside Ethan, her hands clasped in front of her, trying to steady the swirl of emotions inside her chest. She had never expected to be here, sharing silence with the man whose decisions shaped an entire empire. Yet the moment did not feel overwhelming. It felt strangely peaceful. Ethan turned his gaze back toward the skyline. "I come up here when the world feels too loud," he said. "It reminds me that there is space above everything, space to breathe." "Husi?" Emma nodded, her voice gentle. "I understand. Sometimes I need silence too. Life gets heavy down there." He looked at her again, studying her face with an expression she could not fully read. "You carry more weight than you admit." She flinched slightly, embarrassed by the truth in his words. "I just try to get through the day, sir. That is all." "That is not all," he replied. "You have resilience. I saw it the moment you walked into that interview, even before that." Her breath caught. She understood what he meant. The elevator. That moment she had wanted so desperately to forget. She swallowed. "About that day, I did not know anyone was listening." "I know," he said softly, "and I am sorry you felt exposed. I should not have let it affect me the way it did." His honesty stunned her. She had expected indifference, not reflection. She shook her head gently. "It is all right. I should not have been talking about something so personal in a crowded elevator." "As why? But you were being honest," Ethan said, "and sometimes the truth slips out in the most inconvenient places. It does not make it any less real." She looked down at her hands, unsure of what to say. She felt vulnerable, but in his presence, vulnerability did not feel shameful. It felt seen. "As your employer," Ethan continued, "I want you to know something. Your worth is not affected by what you said or who heard it. You do not owe anyone an explanation for your life." "Tu parles." Emma felt her eyes sting. She had never heard words like that from someone in power. She wiped a quick tear before it could fall. "Thank you. That means more than you know." A quiet moment settled between them, warm and steady. The city lights flickered awake one by one, casting a soft glow over the rooftop. Ethan stepped closer, stopping within a respectful distance but close enough that she felt the shift in the air. "I brought you up here for another reason," he said. "I wanted to give you something." From the small table behind him, he picked up an item wrapped in a simple protective cover. When he handed it to her, Emma felt her heartbeat rise. She peeled the cover away slowly. Her sketchbook, the one she thought she had misplaced days ago. Her breath caught. Where did you find this?" "It fell in the lobby the day of your interview," Ethan said. "I saw it and kept it safe. I thought you might need it back." "Hesline." She opened the cover, her fingers trembling. Her small doodles, her notes, her dreams, everything was intact. Even the pressed flower her mother had given her when she was 16 lay perfectly preserved inside. "I know how important it is," Ethan said quietly, "and I did not want you to lose it." Emma pressed the sketchbook to her chest. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "Thank you, sir, truly." Ethan's expression softened. "Emma, you do not need to call me sir when it is just the two of us." She met his eyes, startled. "What should I call you?" His voice dropped to something warm, something unexpectedly intimate. "Call me Ethan." The rooftop seemed to still around them, the city fading to a distant whisper. Emma felt something shift inside her, gentle, fragile, powerful. She had never imagined someone like him would look at her the way he did now, and neither of them stepped back, because the distance between their worlds had begun to collapse, piece by piece, the moment he heard her voice in that elevator. The air on the rooftop grew still, as if the city itself were pausing to listen. Emma held her sketchbook close, the familiar weight grounding her as everything inside her shifted. Ethan stood only a few feet away, his gaze steady, sincere, and warmer than she had ever seen it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was not uncomfortable. It felt like the kind that settles when two people finally understand something they had been circling for days. Emma broke it first. "Ethan, I do not know what to say." "You already did," he replied softly. "You said it the moment you opened that sketchbook. You trust me with the parts of your life that matter." She felt emotion tighten her throat. "I do not trust easily." "I know," he said. "Neither do I." A gust of wind brushed past them, carrying the distant sounds of traffic. The lights of the city glowed like a field of small stars. Emma looked at Ethan, and for the first time, she did not see the CEO who owned half the skyline. She saw a man who had been lonely for far too long, a man who had spent years hiding behind meetings, deadlines, and impossible expectations, a man who looked at her as if she mattered. Ethan stepped closer, closing the last bit of polite distance. "I want to be honest with you," he said. "Since the elevator, I have not been able to forget your voice, not because of what you said, but because of how real it was. It reminded me that sincerity still exists." Her breath trembled. "I never meant for you to hear any of that." "I am glad I did," he said. "It brought you into my life." Emma felt warmth rise in her chest, spreading slowly until it reached her fingertips. She opened her sketchbook to the page where she wrote her quiet dreams. She traced the words with her thumb, knowing one of them had already come true. A place where she was respected. She looked up at him. "What happens now?" Ethan exhaled, his voice steady but full of something hopeful. "Now, we choose, with honesty, with respect, with whatever pace you need." Emma nodded, a small smile forming. "I would like that." He extended a hand, not as a CEO offering a contract, but as a man offering something far more fragile. She placed her hand in his, feeling the quiet certainty in the gesture. The rooftop felt brighter somehow, as if the city lights had shifted to celebrate them. Ethan held her gaze. "This began with a mistake," he said gently, "but it might be the best mistake that ever happened to me." Emma's smile deepened, soft and full of understanding. "To me too." They stood together beneath the night sky, their hands intertwined, no longer divided by worlds or titles. Just two people, beginning something real in the most unexpected way. And as the city glowed around them, their story settled into its first true moment of peace, an ending that was really only the beginning.